Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the MMA Fighting Rankings Show. This is your host, Alexander K. Lee, ready to talk about some of the moving and shaking that has been going on in all of the divisions, off from heavyweight all the way down to strawweight. Some exciting stuff. We have new champions. We have several champions who held on to their spots. Kind of a lot has changed since the last ranking show, but kind of not. That's kind of the state that MMA is in at the moment, right? It feels like there's constant news, feels there's constant fluctuation, and yet at the end of the day, it also feels like we're a bit stagnant. That's kind of the weird dichotomy of being MMA and being a combat sports fan these days. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit. We're gonna have two big topics to talk about today. I'll just tell you guys right off the front. We want to talk about Jon Jones. Yes, his retirement feels like it happened 2 months ago now, given the MMA news cycle. But we never really had the opportunity to sort of break down, now that it's over, now that it's all said and done, now that Jones is definitely retired and never, ever, 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 ever fighting again. Where does he stand in the all-time list? Because we saw a ton of reactions. So anyone who was on social media when that retirement announcement went down saw the immediate reactions. But let's, maybe we can have a little more objectivity. We can kind of take a step back, and look at it. Now we're a little removed from the news. And also we'll talk about our number one pound for pound situation, guys. You might have heard Ilia Topuria, the new lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev out of the division, chasing his own second title sometime later this year. But Topuria's triumph at UFC 317 has raised the question of who is number one. And Makhachev has been our number one for over 600 days. But I'm seeing a lot of Topuria number one talk now, guys. So here to help me dig into these topics is a few members of our esteemed voting panel. First off, I'll introduce the great and always fair Jed Michoud.
I am always fair, and I'm going to be very fair about Jon Jones, as people pay no attention to the chickens can't be goat signs over my right shoulder. I will be more than fair to Jon Jones, and I am the only person who is being fair to the true number one pound for pound fighter in the world. But we'll come back to that when that is the topic of conversation.
We will come back to that, and we'll get to first. We got another one of our guest co-hosts today. What do we call this, guys? When it's our panel of people, another MMA fighting brilliant mind, the wonderful Damon Martin, Juliana Pena fan, number one. Very, very reluctantly had to take her off of the top spot in the women's bantamweight rankings. How's it going, Damon?
I don't think she wasn't my number one bantamweight when she was champion. So I don't think she was not. So yeah, why are you just starting like this, AK? Why are you just starting right off the bat with this?
Yes, it was. She was not. I believe going into, what was the event, 316 when she became champion. I think 4 of us had Kayla Harrison number one, so she was already MMA Fighting's number one bantamweight going into 317. I believe I was one of the Peñas, and I want to say Mike. I think Mike was the other Pena. But obviously Harrison dominated. We have a unanimous women's bantamweight number one. In fact, the article's not out yet, guys. But maybe by the time this goes up, you'll be able to look at it. You have a little visual aid. All but one of the 11 divisions that we rank have unanimous number ones, which is to say all 6 of our panelists voted for the same number one fighter. Only heavyweight is different. We have 5 votes for Tommy Aspinall and 1 vote still for Francis Ngannou. But this says a lot, of course, about the dominance of the UFC these days. Bellator no longer even existing. PFL being very funny sort of with its champions. PFL losing several of its champions. I mean, they had Kayla. If they had, I don't know, had a bantamweight division there, maybe that would have been a non-UFC number one. But no, we are unanimous. There's not a lot of dissension to go around. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Jed, is this a good thing? Is this a good, it feels a bit boring, but it's a good thing that for a moment we have peace in the land of Rankings Landia, and that we're all like, we all have the same number ones.
So it's definitely a good thing. We should all have the same number. The hope. Yes, because that's the point of the belt is supposed to be who is the best fighter in the world at this weight class. And if there is unrest in the kingdom or whatever, then that's how we get sort of dissension in the ranks. It should be we shouldn't all have the same rankings, 1 through 15 or whatever. But that shouldn't be how any weight class goes, because sometimes you're going to have a lot of overlap because the fighters have have really sussed it out. They've fought each other. You can just kind of weave everybody correctly. But a lot of this is interpretive. It's you weighting, certain performances, finishes versus, decisions, etc. And so there should be some sort of discussion to be had about a lot of the rankings. Not for the very top spot. That should go to the champion who should be the best fighter in the world. But that has not always been the case, especially recently. And so I frankly think that it is like a really good thing, because you could make arguments that any of the people we have as number one unanimously aren't the best, right? Like you could say, well, they haven't fought this guy and that guy would beat them, when they match up or whatever. But they have done enough in like a reasonable set of circumstances to be like, yeah, sure, you're clearly the divisional champion. The only person who like it's even really a question with right now is, ironically, Ilia Topuria, who has one win at lightweight. But the win was spectacular and it was over one of the three best guys in the weight class. So like, sure, we can all just be like, yeah, that guy's the champion. He can hold the number one spot. This is how this should be if the sport is working in a harmonious and functional way.
You mentioned, if anyone has a case over Ilia, for example, because it's just a one lightweight fight. Actually, Damon, I want to ask you, in any of our divisions, you have a chance to look some of those over. Gosh, does anyone have a case? I'm looking them over myself right now, and I don't think there is. But does anyone have a case to be, that's not number one to garner a first place vote? I don't know if you want to go outside the UFC. Like, I don't know if one would argue like Dakota Ditcheva. I think that's a little crazy. It's probably too early. But just to give people some idea, like at various points, we had Patchy Mix at one time was getting first place votes. Again, Kayla Harrison was our number one before she even won the title. So like we did not have to adhere to the UFC titles. It's just at this moment we really are. But Damon, is there anyone right now that has a case to say like, okay, they don't have the belts, but you could argue they're number one? I don't know. Are you seeing anyone?
I mean, and also let me just correct you real quick. 2 wins for Ilia Topuria lightweight. Don't forget Jai Herbert. Okay, you're erasing Jai Herbert.
Of course, I am because I was told in no uncertain terms, and frankly, to some extent, correctly in the lead up to this fight. Well, we're not counting that. That fight was a million years ago. Don't worry that he got hurt by Jai Herbert. That was a long time ago. That fight doesn't count. I'm on board with that. It just doesn't count. Like, who gives a shit about that? He's had one lightweight win, but it's a really good one. It's a really good one.
But yeah, I mean, to answer your question though, I don't really think so. I mean, the only one like the one outlier in our voting, and I don't know who, honestly, I don't know who it was the Francis Ngannou, Tommy Aspinall thing. And the thing is, I don't really have a problem with that based upon Francis's entire body of work, and when he left, he was UFC champion. The problem that Francis is running into is just he's fought one guy in the last like 3 years, and it was Renan Ferreira, who is fringe top 15. I mean, and that's mostly just because heavyweight is god awful. So like in my estimation, Tom has done way more in the last 3 years, while Francis has been boxing and not fighting. So it's just based upon that, where it's like, I feel like Tommy Aspinall has kind of surpassed him. But if you want to argue Francis because he left as UFC champion, he hasn't lost since then, I guess you could make that argument. But outside of that, no. I mean, I was one of the people leading the charge in the Patchy Mix train, and then Merab just kept winning. And I'm like, well, I can't deny that. Of course, Patchy came over and, kind of laid an egg in his UFC debut, but I was like leading the charge in the Patchy Mix thing for a while. And then Merab just kept doing Merab things. And I'm like, yeah, he's number one. And who was the other? I did at one point have a different flyweight number one from one championship. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
Adriano
Moraes. Thank you. Adriano Moraes after he beat DJ, after he beat Demetrious Johnson. I had him ranked briefly as number one because you knock out Demetrious Johnson. That's pretty impressive. But yeah, now, I mean, one championship doesn't even promote MMA anymore. So that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, there really isn't. I mean, you're like, Johnny Eblin's a really, really good middleweight. Problem is Johnny Eblin has no one to fight right now. And Dakota Ditcheva, I think she's legit, but she has one win over like a really quality opponent. Good win, Tyler Santos, but still just one win. So yeah, it's just, there's just nobody. I mean, there's just really no arguing right now.
I think you could make an argument that Arman Sarukian is the number one lightweight.
You could. So
he's beaten a lot of people in the weight class, and I didn't, not who I ranked number one, but I think that there is a realistic argument for that one.
I mean, if we're gonna jump around real quick, I agree with the Armin thing. If first of all, AK, I didn't get an intro, by the way. You introed everyone but me.
This is true. I did not introduce AK.
I was gonna say
start the show over. Start the show.
Yeah,
over, start the show. I was like, Casey's here, guys. Casey's here too.
Hey,
Casey's here too. I totally forgot to introduce Casey, the producer extraordinaire. You're just sometimes you're so. You know what they say? The sign of a good producer is the one you don't see.
All right, thanks.
See, Casey, that was perfect. That was perfect. Anyone listening to this in podcast form is gonna be like, wow. It's a great producer.
What I was going to say though was, if in my mind, if Topuria had won a competitive fight against Oliveira and didn't win the unbelievably spectacular way he won, I was actually kind of in my mind already planning to put Armin as the top lightweight, but because of how he won, I just couldn't do it. Yeah, that was basically my thinking. So that's what you had said. Yeah, because ranking wise, Armin's still above. So if it wasn't a championship fight, it was just a fight. I mean, I wouldn't put Topuria above Armin. Yeah, but the dominance of the win was just unreal. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Yeah,
and there's a measuring stick because Armin fought Charles a year ago, went to a split decision with him. And at UFC 3, that was a very close fight. Ilia knocks him out in under 3 minutes. I know it's MMA math, but I'm just saying, like, the eye test says, like, they both had the same fight. Ilia knocks him out, and, Armin barely slips by him.
I agree.
Yeah, and I get it. And that's why I have Ilia. But if somebody was on this pod and had put Armin, I would be like, yeah. Because, like, if you had done it, your entire philosophy is largely, well, you can only advance past the guy you beat. And prior to 317, I assume that you had Armin in front of Charles Oliveira. So if you had been like, he didn't beat the guy in front of him, he can only bump, I would have been like, okay, I buy that argument. So, but nobody made that argument. We all unanimously picked him.
I just want to say, Jed, you mentioned Jonah Martins earlier. I can tell that was a Freudian slip preparing for your anti-Islam argument.
Correct.
Okay, I see how it is. Well done. You can bring that up again later.
I was 100% a Freudian slip because of that.
I'm trying to look at some other names.
Real quick, I want to defend my Francis thing because I was the one guy outlier that picked Francis Ngannou as number one, but it's one with almost like an asterisk. Like if there's 1A and 1B, just because, and this is all Jon Jones' fault, just because Francis has fought more recently than Tom Aspinall. Once Tom Aspinall enters the cage and wins, once Aspinall enters the cage and wins, any way he wins, I will put him up above Francis. It's just the recency. It's just it's so close right now, but that's all.
And Francis never lost the title. Like I know we should. It's not fair to say, and that's not fair to Tom because Tom has obviously since that time has beaten 2 top 10 guys. Chris Blade was a top 10 guy, and Cyril Gane was not Cyril Gane. I'm sorry. Sergey Pavlovich when he won the belt was a top 5, top 6 guy. So obviously the recent body of work for Tom is much stronger, but Francis never lost the title. He was our lineal number one for the longest time. And just because, of this inactivity, we did kind of have to eventually bump him down. Like it was only fair. So the only other arguments I think of, guys, is, Jed, you once upon a time, did you not have Shavkat as your number one once upon a time?
I did.
But you think that there's no case for him? There's no case for him to be higher than JDM?
I think it's a lot harder because I pulled Shavkat off number one when Leon was still champion because he just was not being active enough. Mm-hmm. And Leon had, he won the Usman rematch. I think that is when I officially did the swap. Because when Leon beat Usman, that was when I put Shavkat number one. And then when he won the second one, I was like, all right, you just got to give Leon his flowers here. And it's not like Shavkat was fighting so frequently. And now it's especially hard to do it when you're like, he fought in December. That was a competitive, good win, but he's out and there's no talk of him. Could maybe, it's not the craziest thing.
No,
but because the Jack win is really good. And the rest of Jack's resume is pretty solid as well.
I would have no problem with someone if they had Shavkat number one because Jack Della Maddalena, amazing fighter, earned it. He really is a champion of circumstance, right? He was supposed to fight Leon Edwards in a UFC London main event and then got his opportunity, took advantage of it, won clean, looked all the world like the number one welterweight in the world. So I'm not taking away from JDM. But if someone said Shavkat, because he was supposed to fight for the title in December, right? It's really just, it's totally out of Shavkat's hands that he is not the number one welterweight right now.
I don't know about that. I mean, Jack,
Damon, go ahead.
I mean, Jack. I mean, listen. I know he's dropped recently, but he did have a knockout win over Gilbert Burns when Gilbert Burns was still in the top 10. And Shavkat's biggest win outside of Ian Machado Gary is Wonder Boy, and Wonder Boy is not the same Wonder Boy was like 5-6 years ago. So, like, I would argue Jack has a better resume than. Now that he has a win over Bilal and Gilbert, he has a better resume than Shavkat with wins over Wonder Boy and Jeff Neal. I think Jeff Neal's still a quality win. That's in there as well. But I think Wonder Boy was the biggest win until he beat Ian Machado Gary. And I still think I think Jack's 2 wins with Bilal and Gilbert are still slightly better than that right now. And I agree with Jed. The other problem is Shavkat's been out of sight, out of mind, which is a problem. He won in December and now he's just disappeared.
Yep. But I will say this on this topic. If Shavkat comes back and has to fight, because we all expect Islam's going to fight Jack. And so let's say Shavkat, fights Sean Brady and he finishes Sean Brady. I would be very open to reconsidering, especially if Islam beats Jack, right? Because then it's the Topuria situation all over. Islam has 1 welterweight win if he beats Jack. And let's say it's competitive. He doesn't even blow the doors off, but he wins, a Volkanovski 1 pretty clear decision. If Shavkat adds Sean Brady and he's done what he's done, I'm probably going to put him. So those are the good times when it's fine for there to be dissension. We don't want it to be well, shit, man, everybody's bad and the UFC's giving title fights to the number 14 dude because he's famous or whatever.
Yeah, sure. The one other name I want to throw out there is
was that a shout out to Paddy Pimblett?
Don't no, that would be the unranked lightweight because he's famous.
We should mention Paddy is ranked. I think it was already ranked. There was just someone who didn't have him in their rankings, but we don't need to go with this again. By the way, Casey, I'm sorry to say, Alexander Shabley no longer a Favre. That must be your fault. Did you abandon Shabley?
I had to.
Wow.
I had to. Wow. He got popped, and so he's out. And
that's right.
I had to put some random lightweight in the ranking, and I don't know. Paddy came up. Yeah,
sure.
It's cool. Thing to do. He's the hipster.
I didn't realize this. We need to remove AJ McKee because he's no longer a lightweight either. So that's we need to get out of there.
Is he going back fully?
He told me his next fight's at featherweight, and he told me he's staying at featherweight. That is his weight class. AJ's next fight in July, whatever it is, the Cape Town card. He's fighting at featherweight again, and he told me he's staying at featherweight. That is his division now. So
just making things hard.
Yeah, Corey Anderson heavyweight. I don't know what's going on. PFL, just keep PFL in your fighters. I don't know what's going on. No. One more name I want to mention, Casey. If you could bring up the featherweight rankings, I know he doesn't have the resume yet, and also he finishes nobody. Is there not a case like Movsar's? I know he has to earn it. We just want to see him fight for it. But if someone said Movsar was the number 1 featherweight, you're just absolutely denying that. No way, no case.
Correct. No chance.
He's never lost yet. I don't know if you heard about that before.
He hasn't. And if Volk had lost other fights, but Volk lost to one dude, that dude's not in the weight class anymore. Sure. I think that would be. And I'm a man who's been disrespectful to Alexander Volkanovski from time to time. That would be incredibly disrespectful to what Alexander Volkanovski has accomplished if you put Movsar in front of him.
He's not even the real champion. You got a vacant belt. Come on. That could have been. Why didn't Movsar get that opportunity?
I'm kind of open to that. I'm actually open to that discussion. But that doesn't mean he should be the top ranked featherweight because
that's 2 different things.
Not enough.
He should have gotten the shot instead of Diego. Okay, that's fine. We'll move on.
Yes.
We're gonna get back to
let's not forget Volkanovski is the greatest featherweight of all time too. So there's a little extra.
Okay, Damon, please, Damon. We have
you can't
we have another GOAT talk I want to get to.
And also, it's just no one believed in Volkanovski. Just saying, no one believed in him.
Yeah, and you know who was right? The people who didn't for 3 of his past.
All right, we're moving on. We'll get because listen, we're going to talk about Ilia more, we're going to talk about Islam more, and we're going to talk about someone else more, a third option in the pound-for-pound rankings. But I want to talk all time since Damon kind of brought it up. When we talk about all time, the big picture, I want to talk about Jon Jones. I want to say I had conflicted feelings about his retirement, but I really didn't. Probably because we had all kind of no, because I'm not being mean. I mean, we had all kind of understood that like he's 1 foot and for 9 toes out the door, right? When he wasn't fighting Tom Aspinall, we're like, well, it's not just Tom. It really seems like he doesn't want to fight anybody. Probably if they had come with Alex Pereira, that fight almost definitely would have happened. Just doesn't seem like it was ever really in the works for whatever reason. Probably multiple sides just did not make sense. But now, again, guys, it ended poorly. The Tom Aspinall drama is one of the most irritating storylines as far as feuds go of all time of MMA history. But I want to try and not think about that. I want to think about the good times, guys. I want to think about the good times we had with Jon Jones in cage and ignore all that other stuff as well. And I want to get everyone's opinion. We usually revisit these lists once, every 5 years, maybe you make like an updated GOAT list. And I think the MMA list doesn't change that much, if I'm being honest. Maybe just for us, I think it skews old school. Maybe if you ask like a post Conor McGregor, post pandemic fan, maybe it would be more like, it would be a lot of new people like Merab would be in like the top 5 or something. I don't know. I can't, Israel Adesanya might be in the top 5. I have no idea. For us, I'm assuming, and I'll go in no particular order. That's a lie. This is my order. That you have to have these 7 names in the conversation. Like you have to. It has to be GSP, Demetrious Johnson, Jon Jones, Jose Aldo, Fedor, Khabib, Anderson Silva. That I think is like has to have this in the conversation. I always have BJ in there. Of course, BJ Penn. I do feel like the end of his career really kind of not even talking about the stuff like the personal stuff, like the way the losing streak at the end. I do feel like for me, it doesn't disqualify him. I could see a lot of people just saying like, no, like it just ended so poorly. You can't have him in there. But I think the top 7, you guys would agree, right? Am I forgetting anyone, or is there someone who definitely just doesn't even belong in that top 7, is not in the conversation?
I mean, I can't
disagree with you. But Damon, please go first.
No, I was just.
Damon,
Damon,
this is just a men's list. Otherwise, I would have included Juliana Pena. I'm sorry. This is men's greatest all-time list. Only men. Juliana Pena will be on another list, obviously. Sorry, Damon. Go ahead.
This is going to sound. I know it's going to get. I'm going to get knocked for this. I know Jed's head's going to pop off his shoulders. But I mean, I can't put Aldo in my list if I have Volkanovski as my number 1 featherweight of all time. So I would say Aldo is not on my 7. By the way, that's not. I love Jose Aldo. I think Jose Aldo is an incredible legend. I just think like if I'm going to say Volkanovski is the number 1 featherweight of all time, and I'm also ranking Aldo more as just a featherweight because his bantamweight career was a little up and down. He didn't have a bad bantamweight run, but I don't weigh that nearly as much as what he did at featherweight.
Okay. Jed, you look very. I'm glad. I was worried. I'm like, no, Damon's making a lot of sense right now. I think this is okay. You guys have also, I feel like, debated this on another show.
Yeah,
and other shows.
I've just had this discussion. Yeah. Like, I love Damon. He's wrong. Everyone who thinks Volk's better than Aldo is just wrong. And I don't. I've given my points a million times, and they have not swayed their opinions.
Yeah.
Mine is not getting changed until Volk does some more.
Jed, am I forgetting any names? Or should any of those names not be there?
I think one of those names shouldn't be there. I've been saying this for probably 2 years now. I don't care who you rank as your greatest fighter of all time, as long as it's of this 6. I believe there's a pantheon of 6 fighters that are there, that they are in the room. There's a GOAT room, and it's guarded by a velvet rope, and only these 6 people get to walk into their special little clubhouse. And it is 6 of the 7 that you mentioned. It is John, it is GSP, it is DJ, it is Anderson, it is Jose, and it is Fedor. And the one that is left out is Khabib. I love Khabib. Khabib is one of my favorite fighters of all time. Khabib is, I would honestly guess, the last fighter I'll have like a real emotional connection to at this stage of my fandom and career, in the way that like I was always rooting for Khabib in the cage. His career was at the top was simply too short. And again, BJ Penn is my favorite fighter of all time. He is the most meaningful fighter to me. His career, if he had just been like, hey, if he had won the Cal Luna rematch instead of the absolutely nonsensical draw that then killed the lightweight division, then he probably is. Like, he's probably just the greatest fighter who ever lived, because instead of doing, I'm going to go fight Gomi at Rumble in the Rock and fight Henzo and fight Lyoto Machida and just kind of bounce around, like, he just defends his lightweight belt against Dean Thomas, etc. Obviously runs them, gets the chance against Matt Hughes, still wins that, and builds this sort of insurmountable lead at lightweight. But because his real focused lightweight run was so short, and he just did a bunch of other things. He is beloved, right? And like, I don't know if that's worth it, in the context of the thing, but I wrote about this with Ilia Topuria. Like, the way Ilia is going in his career, he's not going to be a traditional all-time great in these terms, because he is just not interested in putting together a sustained title run. And that is the currency of greatness in the sport. He will be a beloved fighter. And if he wins the welterweight belt and does something no one's ever done, then sure. But if he doesn't do that, he's going to be a guy who had 6 or 7 fights at the very peak of the sport and then walked away early, because that's sort of his intention. And I respect that. But in these conversations, like Khabib, you get left out. And so Khabib, and to some extent Islam Makhachev, they're the guys guarding the velvet rope into the room, because I don't think you can put Islam in that room. He only has 4 title defenses. If he wins the welterweight belt, maybe we open the discussion up. But like, I need you to get to like at least 6 title defenses to get in this room, because that is what greatness in all sports, and particularly in combat sports, has really always been about. And there are only 5 men in the history of the sport, plus Fedor's career is obviously a little unique in that regard, who have done that. And so it's a 6-person pantheon. Whoever you pick from that 6 is your GOAT, I'm fine with.
Okay, I'm going to focus more, John, a second. Yeah. Actually, I want to go to you. Go ahead, and then I also want to hear your if there's any names I forgot, or if there's any names you would throw in that, add to that 6 or 7.
I don't think he's in the 6, but there is one weight division that's missing from that list. And that's men's bantamweight.
Bantamweight. I think Dominic Cruz is right on the edge.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, is it Dominic Cruz, or has Merab surpassed him yet? Is Merab about to enter that with maybe one more win?
I think one more win, and I think Merab moves into the I'm guarding the rope with Khabib and Ilia. Or not Ilia, Islam. Mm-hmm. And 2 more wins. Like, Merab is very close to being in the room. He's very close to being in the room.
That's all.
Dom's not in the room, but I think Merab's really close to it.
Yeah, I don't think Dom's in the room, but if we have to put a bantamweight in that little list, because there wasn't a bant, right? Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Yeah, if like all of a sudden Merab could like honestly be on that very
absolutely
Mount Rushmore. It's wild.
Well, Merab is much closer. I like this is going to sound like I'm digging on Dominic Cruz, and I'm not. I think Dominic Cruz had an incredible career. But when you really examine this, I think I said this privately in a Slack conversation we had a while ago. When you look at many of his biggest wins, they came against flyweights, guys who were flyweights who just fought at bantamweight because there was no flyweight division. Joseph Benavidez was a flyweight. Demetrious Johnson is a flyweight. I'm not trying to discredit what he did. I'm just saying, like, if you really dig down and drill into his record, a lot of what Dominic Cruz did in WEC was against guys who were legit flyweights. Still quality, still good wins, but it's hard for me to put wins over flyweight, the guys who were flyweights, comparatively to Umar Nurmagomedov, comparatively to Sean O'Malley, comparatively to Petr Yan, the guys who Merab is beating right now. So it's not a knock. If you're nitpicking and saying who's the best bantamweight, that's why I put Merab above Dominic, because a lot of Dominic's career was spent fighting guys who were actually flyweights masquerading as bantamweights.
Is this the point of the podcast where I mentioned that 7 of Jon Jones's title defenses came against guys who fought at 185 pounds?
All right. Well, let's get into that. Let's get into the Jon Jones of it all, as it were. Was there something else I wanted to ask you first, Casey? No, let's get into the Jon Jones of it all. I'm just going to ask you all what number you have him at first. Don't tell me who he's ahead of. Don't tell me who's behind. Let me know what number he's at. I'll give you guys a second. Do you guys all have a number? You guys all have a number?
Not really, but I'll make one.
Damon?
Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. There's no question. He's number 1.
Okay. So Jones, Damon, number 1. Casey.
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay. I think I know. Okay. It seems pretty odd. I think who's be ahead of him. Jed.
Oh,
he's doing some math. He's mathing.
I'm just trying to see, like, I'm going to go 5.
Number 5. Okay. We're kind of all around over here. I would go 3. I think my number for Jon is 3.
Y'all are crazy. Right, y'all are.
Let's let Damon go first. Damon hasn't won, so he doesn't have to explain who's ahead of Jon, because no one's ahead of Jon. So yeah, Damon, let's make the case for Jon number. I mean, it's not that hard to make. So, but go ahead. Let's wax a little.
I mean,
Jon.
Just look at it. I mean, undefeated record. I don't care, Matt Hamill. You don't actually have a win over him. I'm gonna, but okay, let's just get that out of the conversation. He has wins over 8 former UFC champions. That's a huge mark on his resume right there in terms of like the guys he beat. I mean, in a row, he beat Shogun, Rampage, Lyoto, Rashad Evans. Obviously, you add in a couple wins over Daniel Cormier. You add in Glover Teixeira, who ended up becoming a champion. And then he goes to heavyweight and he beats, Cyril Gane. I'm not going to count Stipe because that was a fight that probably should never happen, and Stipe was done at that point. But you can say Stipe's on the record. It is a former UFC champion, so you can't just totally discount it. But then you just look at the resume. I mean, undefeated, the runs he went on, the guys he beat, the way he dominated guys. He had a cut. I mean, the closest, like the only guys who came close to beating him, you could argue, were Dominic Reyes and Thiago Santos, and those were at a point when he basically just didn't care. Like, he was fighting guys who should have been in there with him, and they fought him to a close decision, and he still ultimately won. And the very first Alexander Gustafsson fight, and then you look at the rematch, and he absolutely obliterated Gustafsson. In terms of talent, in terms of accomplishments, in terms of resume, I just don't think anyone touches Jon Jones. Now, if you're going to argue with me about the steroid thing, okay, that's the conversation we can have. Did he cheat? Okay, we can have that conversation, and that's a fair criticism. When you look at his resume, when you look at the guys he's beaten, the champions he's beaten, the legends, the amount of Hall of Famers. I said champions, 8 current or former UFC champions. Look at the amount of UFC Hall of Famers on his resume. That might be even more. I'm not sure what the actual number is if I really drill down to it. That's a number. So, I mean, I just think when you look at level of competition he fought and the amount of champions he fought and defeated, it's just, to me, it's immeasurable. And I love Georges St-Pierre. I think he's incredible. I think he'd be number 2. And I know somebody's probably going to make an argument for Demetrious Johnson. I really don't want to turn this into like me bashing Demetrious Johnson, but I don't think Demetrious could be even on the same level with Jon Jones, in my opinion, in terms of GOAT status. So to me, it's Jon all day, all night. If you want to say steroids, fine, I'll let you have that argument, but that's it. That's the only argument you can make.
I'll go next. Strong case, Damien. Strong case. Again, and a lot of fans feel the same way. I mean, you say Jon Jones, people immediately say GOAT. They start throwing up the GOAT emojis. It is not it's not an outside of even with all this Tom Aspinall stuff, even with his inactivity, or people being like, oh well, his heavyweight run wasn't what it could have been. The heavyweight stuff is almost just like a side quest, right? And what an impressive side quest it was. So I don't think it's hard to make that argument. I don't think too many people will be up in arms about it. I know people don't like Jon. He's very easy to dislike, frankly, but the accomplishments are what they are, right? So I'll go next just because I have him the second highest. I do. So I have GSP number 1, Canadian bias. I'm not ashamed. And I actually have DJ number 2. So I'm glad you mentioned DJ. So my case for DJ is like, the obvious, the record title defenses. I also feel like his competition has always been underrated. I just feel like Jon's stats look so good. You're right. When you spelled out that way, like, oh, all the former champions that he's beaten is Hall of Famers is just like unbelievable. But I do feel like it's also because, let's be honest, flyweight is not like a division that was really promoted intensely around, outside of the UFC. Now, maybe over in Asia, there's probably a little more flyweight activity. But even then, it wasn't a marquee division. So Demetrious Johnson didn't have champions to beat, right? Like I think the guys he fought were very good, and actually better than a lot of like other champions as far as quality competition goes. Because if you look at some of the guys he beat and how did they do in the UFC after DJ fought them, or how did they do in MMA in general after DJ fought them, like a lot of the guys he beat still went on to have like pretty good careers. So like, I think to me that matters, but I get it. I don't think anyone could say, oh, well, John Moraga's on the same level as Shogun Rua. Ali Bagutinov is on the same level as Lyoto Machida. I get it. It sounds insane when you put it that way. So I can't, this is why having Jon over him is very easy, but I've always thought DJ's competition was underrated. So yeah, and just, and the way he won and stuff like that was very impressive. Well, so it's close, but that's my 3. I would have Jones ahead of Aldo, Fedor, Khabib. I do have Khabib probably a bit higher, certainly higher than Jed. But yeah, but I have him 3 for me. And the other strong case for Jon is, and this might be part of your criteria, this might not be, I have to do the thing in my head where like, if all things were equal and you took the, Jon Jones and his skill set and you put him in there with any fighter, again, in strength and size were, mostly proportionate, I still think Jon's is like the most unbeatable fight I've ever seen. And this is purely subjective, purely theoretical. obviously you can make a case for DJ, you can make a case for any of the guys on our list. But when I think about it, when I try to picture Jon Jones and his skill set against anyone, I just never see him losing. I would have picked him to beat Tom Aspinall. You know, we all want to see the Tom Aspinall fight. One of the reasons because I think he could beat Tom, but I just wanted to see it. So that to me is what sort of keeps him, like, I cannot take him lower. I cannot take him out of the top 3 because comparing resumes, you can nitpick, but like in my mind, just trying to think about it in a more abstract way, I think he beats anybody in a fight. I think. Casey, let me go to you next. I'll go to I'll have to go to Jed last. So Casey, let me go to you next. You said 4. Are you with me with GSP and DJ, or you have different names ahead of them?
No, I have DJ, GSP. My number 3, I kind of jump around, but I probably end up going Anderson Silva.
Okay, of course.
Yeah. But he had a bad, the end of his career was kind of, he had that kind of, not quite as bad as BJ, but he got out a little before. But then I have Jon at 4. I guess, honestly, everything Damon said, I get it. I have no issue with it. I guess my issue, I kind of go with what Jed said. I hate, and it's not Jon's fault, but to me, he beat a lot of middleweights. And we always say 205 is a crappy division, and he just ruled over a crappy division. Now, it was a crappy division with a hell of a lot of stars, and they sold pay-per-views. That is 100% true. But I still think overall it's still a crappy division. And even though that's why I love DJ, even though it's not a division that sold pay-per-views. It's not a division that I was there in Vancouver when like 90% of the crowd was leaving after the 3rd round during the Bogatinov fight. It's weird to think that's the GOAT, and the arena's like, oh, gotta beat traffic. But I'm just talking pure skill, pound for pound skill, and I just think those smaller guys are just they just have the benefit. I just think they're just way more skilled, and just Jon's wins just are, man. Who do you think Jon beat in his opponent wise? They were in their prime. Like
I always think a lot of people. I always think a lot of people. Like I don't think Shogun.
Cormier was definitely in his prime.
And Shogun wasn't washed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I talked over you. I'm sorry.
Like I don't think Shogun or Machida were like washed when they fought Jon. I thought those were pretty. Yeah, but I thought those were pretty. Still,
I didn't think that was the best. I don't think that was the best Shogun. Machida ended up being 80. To me, he was always an 85er.
Machida was in his prime, but Machida was
smaller,
was a middleweight who was just good. Because light heavyweight's bad.
Yeah, and I hate saying this. This is a very subjective thing we're talking about. So subjectively, I thought Jon Jones lost against Dominic Reyes. I thought he lost against Thiago Santos too.
That matters, and that matters.
And that matters. I mean, and Damon saying, "Well, I'm just going to ignore that loss to Matt Hamill." Well, like I'm kind of ignoring those wins against Thiago Santos in that sense. I'm taking them as losses. Now, Jon Jones's run, that 7-9 fight, just unbelievable run he had like in 3 years, incredible, just incredible. It was a magical time to be in the sport, much like the Conor McGregor run, much like the Ronda Rousey run. That Jon Jones run is part of those. Just it was fun to be a fan, and it was nothing. And I don't think we're ever going to replicate that kind of Jon Jones run and that hype and that hysteria, and just in all everything that came with Jon Jones. So there's a lot more to the Jon Jones story than just his wins and losses. And I think when we talk about the greatness, I think we kind of talk about that too, because he did change the sport and since how we look at it.
Sure. So Casey just taking shots not just to Jon, but the entire light heavyweight division. Just everyone, man. Chuck Liddell, Rampage Jackson. I mean, God, it's Shogun. They're all trash apparently. Like Jesus, Damon, please help.
That goes back to my heart, and I think like when you talk about talent, I think talent and accomplishments are two different things. When you talk about talent, I think the two greatest fighters ever are Jon Jones and Demetrious Johnson. Like I think they are the two most talented fighters we've ever seen. But when you talk about accomplishments, that's where I start digging down on DJ's record. I love Demetrious. Let me be clear about that. I think he's amazing. But like you mentioned, AK, like Ray Borg, Wilson Hayes, Tim Elliott, John Dodson, who's a very good fighter. Horiguchi's a great win. Chris Carriasso.
The immortal Chris Carriasso.
John Moraga. I mean, we can really drill down here and say, like, don't get me wrong, they're not terrible wins, but I would not, like, you consider and say they were middleweights and guys like that, but would you put any of those guys on like an all-time list? You would not. And I think guys like you would say like Rampage deserves a lot of credit for who he is. Rashad Evans deserves a lot of credit for the career he put together. Shogun, of course, is an absolute legend. No one would disagree with that. Whereas I can't look at DJ's record and say, man, it's just legend after legend on here. And I know a lot of that has to do with his dominance. And I think DJ was a victim of his own success because when he came in, that was the brand new flyweight division. There just wasn't as much depth. I think like one of the reasons why I think Pantoja is getting a lot of credit right now is because the flyweight division is filled out so much. Like we actually know who is good at that now. Like we know how good Brandon Moreno is. We know how good Brandon Royval is. We know how good these guys are. And Demetrious was at the very beginning of the flyweight division. So a lot of the wins on his resume just don't look great in hindsight. When you look at John Moraga, you look at Ali Bagatinov, when you look at Chris Carriasso, I'm just going down the list here. Like,
yeah.
And then if you want, and then you add in just you're looking at the little bonus points. Like, what are you doing? I know you said like the heavyweight run for John was almost an afterthought. He had the one win over Cyril Gahn, and then he beat Old Man Stipe. I get it. And DJ, when he did go up in weight, he didn't do well. He got beat, but he got dominated by Dominic Cruz. He absolutely got mauled. I was at that fight, Washington, D.C. He got mauled by Dominic Cruz. And then he went to one championship where everyone's not in the same weight class. And yes, he did eventually get the revenge against Adriano Moraes, but he did get knocked out by Adriano. He did get knocked out by Adriano Moraes. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not discrediting what DJ did. DJ's incredible. Talent-wise, I put him right there with Jon Jones. I just think that he just doesn't have the resume. To match up to John.
I just want to clarify.
I'll say that. Hold on, Jed. Let me say it definitely doesn't have the depth. But if you take I'll say this: if you take DJ's like 4 biggest wins, I almost would put those up there, like as far as like talent wise. Obviously not name value. If you take Adriano Moraes, Cejudo, who he finished the first fight, Kyoji, and like Joseph Benavidez, like those are 4 incredible wins. Those are like 4 really like all time. John Dodson, you can throw him in there too. You know, make it 5 John Dodson. Those are 5 like really. And again, like I said, flyweight just never had the exposure and the history of light heavyweight, right? So he could not say the same problem we have with Jose Aldo all the time, right? We're like, oh, Jose Aldo never beat any former champions. Yeah, he didn't let anyone else become champion, right? So
So that to me,
And DJ,
my favorite argument against Aldo.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like making the argument like because this is going back like a decade, and old man me, and I'm sure Casey will remember this. Like people would still bring up Hoist Gracie. Like Hoist Gracie deserves to be on the pantheon. Hoist Gracie was incredible, but then you got to look at like who he was fighting, where the sport was at that time, like all those kind of things. And that, like I'm saying, like DJ was a victim of his own success because when he came in, there wasn't a flyweight division. They had to like build it on the fly, and so that's why he has guys like Ray Borg and Chris Carriasso on his record. Where you look at them and you say, how did they get title shots? Like, how did they get in there with a guy like Demetrious Johnson? Now, because flyweight has actually built itself out, there's people who are saying, like, I mean, everyone I think here would probably agree. Pantoja has probably defined himself as the number 2 guy already with 4 title defenses versus 11 for DJ because of the level of competition, the guys he's beaten. Yep. I'm not. It's just unfortunately, DJ just came along at a time when the depth wasn't there in that division. So like I said, he's a victim of his own success.
It was real interesting when I had DJ number 1, but then when I talked about these great runs, the Jon Jones run, the Conor run, the Ronda run, during that whole time, DJ was having that run too, and I didn't think of it the DJ run because it was always the co-main event. It was overshadowed by all these other gentlemen. And women. So, Damien, no one's saying anything wrong here.
No,
I think that's everyone's kind of correct. Yeah,
yeah. When you say DJ 1 and Jon Jones 4, the actual gap is like this. It's not like a huge gap. It's like a tiny gap between them and your other 2 guys.
Yeah.
Jed.
That's the thing about my pantheon is it changes every day. Like you asked me and I didn't pull it, and I was like 5. And as we've been talking, I'm like, I'm good to go as high as 2. For John, like I wouldn't have any issue. If you're really going to make me sit down and pick, I don't think there has ever been a day where I have said to myself, I would rather have Jon Jones's career than Georges St-Pierre's career. And maybe that's not the best way to qualify greatness, but if there's a fight, like if you're like, hey, Genie, you can have anyone's fight career. I'm picking Georges St-Pierre's because I think Georges St-Pierre's had the greatest career of all time. And like, I don't know if that makes him the GOAT or not, but we went through look at all the nits you can pick about the Jon and the Demetrious and Jose Aldo and Anderson Silva. Tell me where the weakness is of Josh Koscheck, Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, John Fitch, BJ Penn, Thiago Alves, Dan Hardy. That's the only one. Josh Koscheck, Jake Shields, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz. Like, that run is all new opponents that are hitters. And the reason that they aren't all former champions is because George didn't let them. Like, that is, to me, that is the greatest unfettered run. And I know you can look at it and say, well, he got by Matt Serra. He did. But then we saw what sometimes that happens in this sport. Jon lost to Matt Hamill. And I'm sorry to say this, he lost. Because either he lost to Matt Hamill or we're going by our feelings and not the scorecard, in which case he lost to Dominic Reyes. But he lost a fight somewhere in there. You pick which one he lost. And like, everyone does it unless you're Khabib and you walk away at the perfect time because an unfathomable tragedy happened to you. George is my default answer to this question always at this point in time, just because like it's so hard to argue against his career. You can make arguments for others, but like to say that, you know, as Damon has done, that what Jon has accomplished is just more impressive. And notice I didn't mention the middleweight belt because I don't think that matters. I think that is an insignificant addition, but mostly, and this is the critical piece to all of this, Jon is not the GOAT because chickens can't be goats, guys. We've established it clearly.
So hold on, Jed. Let me ask you.
Damon, go ahead, and then I want to move on. Please, Damon, go ahead, and then I want to move on.
Let me make my serious point, then let me throw Jed's chickens can't be goats thing back at him. One, Georges St-Pierre has the best argument to go against Jon Jones in the GOAT status. The main reason that I put George one spot lower, he's my number 2, is because he did get armbarred by Matt Hughes, and he did get knocked out by Matt Serra. I know, okay, I said Matt Hamill, yes, it's a loss, or Matt, it's a loss. But the eye tests tell me he wasn't losing that fight. He legitimately got armbarred by Matt Hughes, and he legitimately got knocked out by Matt Serra. That's why I have him one spot below Jon in terms of like the pantheon. That's why I don't, as much as I think Anderson Silva is an all-time great, I can't just ignore the end of his career. If you keep going and you start losing, I can't just say it didn't happen. And then your chickens and your chickens can't be ghosts. So I guess you have that same opinion of George, right? Because he chickened out from fighting Robert Whittaker when he won the middleweight title. He retired.
He had a disease.
He's not here. He had a medical issue.
Damon, he had
were you not
have some sympathy.
He had a medical issue?
Oh my!
He could have come back. He could have come back. He could have come back from that. He chose not to.
He wanted to die, Jed. He wanted to die in the cage.
He chose to fight Michael Bisping and avoid Robert Whittaker. I'm just saying, if you're going to make that argument about Jon, you got to make it about Georges St-Pierre too.
At least it didn't take like 10 months for him to leave.
Damon, you're right, which then leads us to the inevitable conclusion that Jose Aldo is actually the GOAT because he is not a chicken.
Okay, all right. I want to say, by the way, I guess the key here is also don't fight people named Matt if you want to like hold on to your Khabib never fought a Matt. Never fought a Matt in his career. I just want to say it. Never fought a guy named Matt. Look at him, 29-0.
That is not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. Jon Jones has one loss. Matt Hamill. GSP's 2 losses. Matt Serra, Matt Hughes. Don't fight Matts.
But in all seriousness, Jed's point is absolutely correct. George is the only guy. To me, it's as far as accomplishments. It's George and Jon, and the only reason I put Jon above George is because he has the 1 loss versus the 2, and the 2 losses were both definitive losses. That's really it. When you talk about resume, you're absolutely right. Like, take out Dan Hardy, which is the one, like, you know, the one
everybody's
like,
got at least one weirdo in their line.
That's his
OSP.
The belt 10 times, you got one weirdo.
No, but when you look at
Chael Sonnen.
Nick Diaz, Carlos, it's all hitters. You're absolutely right. It's one Thiago Alves. I mean, it's just hitter after hitter after hitter. So you're right. Like I said, I have to nitpick in that moment. That's the only reason I put George below the law. But you're not wrong. Like, if you're going to say George over Jon, that argument I'm fine with, and I say Jon over George for the same thing. So that, to me, that's 1-2 is George Jon.
all of this is nitpicking. Once you get to this level of greatness,
of course,
and they haven't, fought each other in the primes of their career, it's just really splitting hairs, which is why I have the 6 that I think are in there. You pick any of those 6, I'm fine.
Jed, you reminded us chickens can't be goats. Really quick before we move on, we do have to move on. Really quick. If he had fought Tom Aspinall and just let's say he cleared Tom, first round finish, takes Tom out.
I think he would have.
Jed, number 1.
I think he almost certainly would have been pretty
Undisputed.
close to universally accepted as the GOAT.
Okay.
Which is why I always I thought the whole thing of that was stupid because he is I gain nothing. No, you actually gain a heavyweight title because his heavyweight title is fictitious. I do not think it's meaningful or real. I think it is a paper belt because he never fought the best guy to get it. And then when he could have fought the other good option, he chose to retire. And I don't blame him for that, but beating Tom, I think would have been a massively significant win for him that he absolutely could have done. Yeah. And it's a shame we'll never see that.
Casey, he clears Tom. He clears Tom, number 1 with a bullet.
If he would have lost to if he would have lost to Tom, he's in the same spot with me.
Exactly.
Of course.
Wouldn't have dropped him at all.
Wouldn't drop him on. And that's the thing that I think that frustrates us all as fans is that, John, you don't have anything to lose. You're still there. You've already established where you are. But you can become that guy if you take that fight. He chose not to, and that's on him.
But the other thing is, and I've said this at the time, in 10 years, no one will care. In 10 years, when it's just us and a whole new crop of fans or 2 generations of new fans, they'll look back and see Jon Jones was a 2-division champion. It's the only thing they'll give a shit about.
That's true. And the person who gets screwed the most in this whole thing is Tom Aspinall because Tom has nobody now to prove he's the best. The only thing he can do is defend the title 19 times and hope that record puts him apart because without John on there, he's got a whole bunch of nobodies to beat and add on that record. I feel bad for him because he's the one who gets screwed the most in this whole thing.
Francis, but John was the guy. Yeah. Francis is there, but agreed.
Yes, John. I'll segue into the next point. Tom Aspinall, Casey, you have our pound for pound list available. Our men's pound for pound list available. I bet Tommy's sitting somewhere around what number? I should know this because I'm the one who puts these lists together. He's at what number 6, 7, 6. Tommy Aspinall at number 6. Not currently in talks to be number 1. You guys can see this graphic. Oh, I put up the bad graphic with the typo, but it's okay. No one will notice what it is. It was pointed out to me.
Now I'm looking for it.
It was pointed out to me by the great Shaheen Al-Shadi, and I was so furious that he noticed it. I should
that man.
Boo.
Oh, I see.
Yes. We have 3 fighters, guys. We have 3 fighters receiving first place votes. I think going into this, I believe Islam was, I won't say heading into 317. Yeah. I think it was 6 first place votes for Islam. I could be wrong. I have to look at last month's rankings. Either way, not the case now. Islam is still our number 1. No real change. Pantoja now has sole position of the number 3 spot. He was tied with Merab. But we have Islam Makhachev number 1, 3 first place votes. Ilia Topuria number 2 with 2 first place votes, and Pantoja coming in with 1 first place vote. And how convenient we happen to have one of each person who has voted for these fighters. So we'll have a little quick. You guys have been with us for a while. I know we'll have a little quick. I don't want to even say debate, but let's make a case here. We'll start with the man who just immediately made an incredible statement this past weekend. So Damon, you made the jump. You put Ilia number 1. Why, Damon? Why?
It really comes down to the quality of wins in his last 3 fights and how it happened. Because you knock it out, and for those who are going to say Islam has 2 wins over Alexander Volkanovski, he does as a lightweight. And Alexander Volkanovski is not a lightweight; he is a featherweight. He is the GOAT featherweight. And Ilia Topuria knocked him out cold. Now I understand the knockout came after he lost to Islam, but he was in his natural weight class. And he did get knocked out. And by the way, I would have picked Ilia to beat him again had they done a rematch. But then you go into Max Holloway, a guy who had never, ever been finished by strikes, ever. Went with some of the hardest hitters at both lightweight and featherweight. Went with Connor, went with Dustin, went with a ton of guys. No one put him away. Ilia Topuria puts him away inside 3 rounds. And then Charles Oliveira is a legit top 3. Lightweight, you go out there and you knock him out in the first round. He hadn't been knocked out in 7 years. And his last knockout was Paul Felder on the ground with elbows. He hadn't been, and that's again going with Gaethje, Poirier, Chandler. To me, it was just the body of work currently. Now, Islam, I've said this and I'll say it again now. If Islam goes out and beats Jack Della Maddalena later this year, which I predict he probably will, then I'll 100% put him back at number one. It's going to be that kind of jockeying for position of who, if Ilia beats Patty, he's not going to get a whole lot of that. If he beats Arman, different story. But if he beats Patty and Islam beats Jack, it's going to be Islam again. So, yeah, it's kind of like what I said earlier about Patchy Mix. I had him at number one briefly at bantamweight, and then Barab won again. I was like, well, I got to put him back number one. If Islam beats Jack, he's going to be number one again. But for now, those 3 wins in a row and doing it the way he did it, I can't not put him number one.
Strong case. Again, this is what people are saying, man. Coming out of this weekend, UFC.com. If you will go to UFC.com, their rankings, Ilia Topuria is officially their number one. I don't know what they're doing now. I don't know if it's other media members. I don't know if they finally got the AI, the meta working on it. But the algorithm has spoken. Topuria is number one according to the UFC. Again, not on ours. You guys can see Islam is number one. That's where I put him. I kept Islam on top, and kind of like Damon, I'm sort of looking ahead to the JDM matchup, which is yet to, actually officially be announced. We're thinking I think it has to be October, but that is not locked in yet. So I'm sticking with Islam, and I'm deciding not to, I'm taking an opposite tack. I'm just not moving him down until I see what happens in that fight. I just feel like he's done so much. I wish he hadn't left the division. I wish we could have seen him fight Ilia, but what's done is done. The decision has been made, and his resume is impeccable. His performances have been, the eye test has just been fantastic. He's rarely in trouble. He's one of the greatest defensive fighters of all time. He's the only guy to defend the lightweight title 4 times, whatever the record is. Yeah, there you go. And yes, and he's making a bold move going up to 170. Now, kind of what Damon said though, if Ilia's defense is against Patty, and even if Islam loses to JDM, now, I guess it would be unreasonable to keep him up top. I guess you have to, I hate when people call pound for pound like a glorified power ranking. But I mean, considering how fast the game moves these days, it kind of is at times. That kind of has to factor in. Like, we have that recency bias. So sure, no matter who Ilia beats next, if he wins and Islam loses JDM, I will very likely bump Ilia up. But if not, even if Ilia fought Arman instead, if Ilia beats Arman and Islam beats JDM, I guess depending how it happens, depending how competitive the fights are, how they end, probably still lean towards Islam. So that's my thing. I think my number one thing is almost like what I was saying with Jon Jones in the all-time argument. If they had fought, I'm picking Islam to beat Ilia. I do think I would pick him to win that fight, whether it's at 170, 155, wherever the catch weight, wherever this bout happens. If it does happen someday, I'm leaning towards Islam, and that's probably the deciding factor for me. Is I think he wins the 1v1, which again, it should not be the definition of pound for pound, but I'm just, if we're nitpicking, trying to find reasons, that's one reason for sure that I'm factoring in. Jed, you went with the flyweight, the short king.
Real quick before you go to Jake.
Oh, go ahead.
If hypothetically,
Casey, by the way, we should say, Casey, you are also a Topuria man. You've also said Topuria.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. If Ilia and Islam actually fought, and Ilia goes up in weight to welterweight, or even goes to weight to 55 or whatever. If it was a super competitive fight, but Islam wins, would you do one of those things where we kind of did, where we had Volkanovski higher pound for pound, but behind them in the actual divisional ranking? I was one of those people that had Volkanovski above Islam pound for pound wise after the first fight. Even though
this is why I never knocked Islam for saying he didn't want to fight Ilia, because he's like, you're not going to give me credit for it because you didn't give me credit for beating Volk. And I say, you're absolutely right. I agree with him. That's why I said I thought Ilia should have come up, fought one fight, and then fought Islam. I was on that train, but now Ilia has a legit win over Charles Oliveira. So now that argument, if they fought, it's different. If they would have fought just like last weekend, I would have understood that argument, because you're saying you're still beating a featherweight. But now Ilia has a legit good win at lightweight. So, and also, I just want to throw this out there, by the way, AK, you mentioned it. Had Islam beaten Arman in January and not Renato Moicano, I'd probably still have him number one. But unfortunately, Moicano, just that win doesn't, yes, it's a title defense, but if it was Arman, I think he would still be number one. But unfortunately, he got Moicano instead. So that's also, I didn't mention that, but that also played a little factor into why Islam's run wasn't quite as much to me. And that's not his fault. But yeah, if he beat Arman, I think that would have been more meaningful.
Sure. Jed, Pantoja.
I feel even better about this than I did when I did it. I've really I think that it's right. Like, I will fully acknowledge that when I initially made this vote, like 90% of it was that I just believe what I'm about to say. And the other 10% was just like, I think this is fun and we should do fun things. And he deserves to be rewarded for being on an incredible run right now. But as I actually like dig into this, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm just correct. And Pantoja is the true and deserving number one pound for pound fighter, because he is the only person on this whole list, save maybe Merab Dvalishvili, though we can talk about him in a second. And if I have one regret, I would bump Merab up one place on my current ranking as I've come to this. He's the only dude who's actually cleaned out his weight class, because that's just what happens. Josh Van is his next challenger, and Josh Van is the next generation. But of currently ranked, not previously ranked, at like current ranked guys, Pantoja has 11 wins over currently ranked opposition. I believe it's 7 different fighters in the top 15 that he has wins over. Obviously, a trilogy of wins over Brandon Moreno, who I have ranked in my pound for pound list. I think is an incredible fighter. He's got 2 wins over Kai Kara France. He's got 2 wins over Brandon Royval. He hasn't just beaten everybody. He's beaten them a lot. Like, and that is, to me, that is what this is supposed to signify, really, is like, who is the most dominant champion of their weight class? And Islam, he is the longest reigning in terms of number of title defenses champion or male champions in the sport right now. He would be tied with Islam. Islam obviously vacated his title, but the knock on Islam that we have said in this podcast and others, and it's not his fault, is he fought 2 featherweights and then Renato Moicano and Dustin Poirier, who we all love and respect. But what does that win in 2024 mean? How good is it? Whereas Pantoja, like, you can quibble that flyweight is a bad weight class because that is a popular thing to have done for the entirety of its existence as a weight class. I don't buy that. And it kind of doesn't matter when you have 11 wins over ranked dudes. Nobody else is close to that. Merab is like the next closest guy. And Pantoja, and like, Merab is really poised to move up. If he goes and like starts finishing people like we just saw him do with Sean O'Malley, he's undeniably moving up in my rankings. But right now, just the body of work consistently done, like he holds, if we're taking this even bigger picture, he holds like 1 million flyweight records at this point for like strikes and finishes and stuff like that. 35 fights, never been finished in any of his losses. He is, I know it's not like a real stat, but he is the first 125er to break the 35 and up curse for weight class champions, whatever. Like, he's not going to hold this forever, and he's not going to hold it for long, but I absolutely think he deserves to hold this spot now. Now, if Islam goes and wins against Jack, Islam bumps back up. For the record, I actually did move to Poirier in front of Islam for all the reasons sort of elucidated. His current run is just, it's worthy of respect, and it's great. But I think Pantoja deserves to have the top spot right now, but because nobody else is going to give you this. This is a Jet original. When Dricus du Plessis beats the shit out of Khamzat Chimaev, he's going to move to my number 1, because that run is sick. Finishing Whitaker, beating Strickland, finishing Izzy, beating the shit out of Strickland, and then finishing Khamzat. Buddy, I feel real good about putting that dude at number 1 when that happens. And honestly, I think that that's how pound for pound should be. I know you said you don't really like it being in power rankings. I actually think that that's sort of a better way to do it, of like, because all of these people, again, it's just like the GOAT conversation. You're having to nitpick to sort of separate who you think belongs at the top of this, when all of these people, the top 6, 7 dudes, are accomplishing so much in the sport. It's incredible. And I'm happy to fet these people, to give them their flowers, because a graphic went out this week showing that there have been 10 pound for pound men's champions in history. And noticeably absent from that graphic is Georges St-Pierre, because his title reign was concurrent with Anderson Silva, who was always above him. All of us on this pod agreed that George is at worst like the second greatest fighter ever, but he never got to hold that spot because Anderson had it. And since Anderson didn't lose, He just kept it forever. Screw that. Let's have a little more fun. Let's let this be a little bit more fluid of a thing. And I think Pantoja deserves it.
Yeah, we have sometimes like people love talking pound for pound, like in general. I think us though, we sometimes get tired of it. We just think it's so meaningless sometimes. But this is I would say right now is one of the most fun eras we have had to have this discussion, because you're right, all the way from 1 to 5, like DDP is an amazing. Even Tom Aspinall, like I know we're talking about like he just doesn't have the competition, but if Tom Aspinall is like rattles off 6 set, like because he could, let's be honest, if Tom Aspinall sticks around, he's only 31 or 32. If he wanted to, he probably could rattle off like 10 straight title defenses.
Yeah, no weight cuts. Happens. Yeah, no weight cuts.
Right. There's a real point that needs to be made about Tom Aspinall, and I made it maybe on BTL last week or I don't know. I made it already, but mostly I want Casey to hear this because it's important that he does. I understand. No, and this is not to be mean to Casey, but just like as a genuine statement of what I believe to be fact. I understand that heavyweights don't get pound for pound love historically. And I even understand heavyweight is an atrocious weight class. That like if Tom Aspinall isn't going to get love, then it can never be achieved because he's not edging out wins. He's killing dudes in 60 seconds. There's literally nothing he could do better because he can't go down a weight class. All he can do is kill these guys in under a minute. And at some point you're going to have to like be like, screw it, man. Or just be like, yeah, the max any heavyweight can ever get is 8. And that's just life in the weight class, I guess.
Maybe it'll get better.
I agree with you, Jed. I agree with you. It's just Jon Jones has prevented this man from achieving that. And what you said is true because I'm a big believer what you said, like the title defenses, when you are number one and every single person in the world is kind of training to beat you, that means a lot. And that's kind of, I'm gonna go back to DJ. That's why I love DJ as far as my GOAT because of all the title defenses. But if Tom Aspinall does that, and I believe he can do that, it will have to. My thinking for pound might have to change for Tom Aspinall.
You can just carve out an exception for him.
The timing exception.
Because it is those dominance of the wins. It's not just winning, it's the dominance.
That's
something we've always factored in, I think.
The dominance matters. It absolutely does. But I always go back to level of competition. I think that's what's dooming Tom, is going to continue to doom Tom, because heavyweight is absolutely dreadful right now. Like it is the worst, probably it's worst it's ever been.
Wow.
And that's what's dooming. And I think, to your Pantoja point, like I think Pantoja deserves a lot of credit right now. But the problem I have is like, if you didn't have him ranked this high before 317, then I don't think you should bump him up after, because I don't think beating Kai Kara-France really counts for much. Like Kai Kara-France is 1-3 in his last 4 fights, and Kai Kara-France's biggest wins. I was looking at his resume like 2 seconds ago. His biggest wins: Steve Erceg, which is what I guess quote unquote got him the title shot. Askar Askarov, he beat up Cody Garbrandt, who was obviously never really a flyweight and should have been down there. Rogerio Bontorin, Tyson Nam, Mark De La Rosa. Like these are the guys that Kai Kara-France has wins over. The guys he's lost to: Amir Albazi, Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno. Like the guys who are actually at the top of the division, he loses to everyone. So I'm not saying Pantoja is amazing. I think Pantoja is incredible. But when we did our post 317 article, I said, I don't really learn anything I didn't already know about him, because Kai Kara-France had no business being in there with him. He didn't. Kai Kara-France was defaulted into that position because they had no one else to put in there with him. That's the only reason he got the title shot.
Jed, you have something up your sleeve?
11. I can't even say it on one hand. That's how many wins. And I don't think that this is a great argument, but I didn't learn a single thing about Ilia Topuria on Saturday, really. I thought he was going to kill Charles, and he did. I've known that dude is real goddamn good. And I was but
just to that argument, Charles Oliveira, Kai Kara-France.
I mean,
what's a more meaningful win? I mean, I'm just saying, what's a more meaningful?
But again, this was not here's an individual thing. It is the totality of his career. I think,
and that's what he is. But that's what I'm saying. Like,
he looks so incredible doing it too. It was just
Pantoja's unbelievable how good he is.
Yeah, Pantoja's amazing. I think Pantoja's running into right now. He's running into the DJ-ism, because when you look at Kai Asakura, who is not like that was getting a shot by default, and he's not really.
You don't respect flyweights, and just say it, David.
It's also small people. Hold on. Casey, can you put up the flyweight rankings real quick? You just pull up the flyweight rankings, because and Jed already run these out. I'm not gonna do the full rundown again. Jed already ran down like it's so like how many ranked guys he's beaten. Like that's what makes it so crazy. So I'm not. And by the way, Jed, thank you for counting Ultimate Fighter fights, the most important fights of all. Really more important than championship bouts, I would say. So yes, listen, he has beaten. And there's a couple of guys here are not in the organization. Yuya Wakamatsu is, of course, not in the UFC, but very good flyweight. This is crazy. He's beaten almost everyone on this. Imagine if he adds. I'm just saying. Imagine if he adds Josh Van. Imagine if he adds Manel Kopp. We think that's going to happen someday.
He trains
I'm just saying. But he'll fight Horiguchi. But he'll fight Horiguchi. Him and Horiguchi have said many times that they'll fight each other.
Pantoja has a win over Manel Kopp. You're forgetting that. He already has a win over Manel Kopp.
Oh, that's true. But imagine if he beats him. Imagine if he beats him again in a championship bout. I also think that this version of Kopp is like the best version we've had so far, minus all the injuries and ability to get in the cage. So I'd love to see that again. Josh Van, it looks fantastic. Yeah, he's probably maybe too young, but Makhachev. Imagine Makhachev comes back.
I think Pantoja is amazing, but I think Pantoja's best wins came a little bit earlier. Like he beat Royval, he beat Moreno a couple of times, Manel Kopp. Those are the wins why I put Pantoja in that top 4. I can't remember where I ranked him. I think I ranked him number 4, number 3, pound for pound. Yeah. He's absolutely right there. These last couple of wins, like Urseg was a bit of a flash in the pan, sorry to say. Kai Asakura, again, getting it by default, and then Kai Kara-France 1 and 3 in his last 4. Those 3 to me they just continued to show his dominance of what I already knew he was from beating Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno. Those are the wins to me.
David just hates small people. That's it.
And it's also, listen, you hang around long enough.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Listen, you hang around long enough, you're going to have some not clunkers, but some title fights that don't have a lot of shine on it.
But then he dominates those clunkers. Yeah. They weren't competitive. Although the Airsec, the Steve Airsec going, what that was
was good.
Yeah,
I love that Casey hates heavyweights and Damon hates flyweights. It's really nice dichotomy.
Guys, this is why our rankings panel is the way it is. Do you see? It's perfect. It's perfectly balanced. It's perfectly balanced. Thank you, guys. Again, there really is no definitive answer, and like Jed said, it could change in a month. That's 3/19. What? August?
Right.
It could change in a month. Yeah. We could have Dricus Duplessis have the first place vote next time. We don't know.
For all the hate I have for flyweights, apparently, let me just say, and I said this on Saturday night last week, Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van is already one of my most anticipated fights. Like that finally gets me like super excited for, because I was not excited. Dude, I'm sorry, I was not excited about Kai Kara-France. I knew it was going to happen in that fight. If anything other than what happened on Saturday night, I would have been shocked out of my mind. But it played out pretty much exactly how I thought it would. Joshua Van, though, that's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you, guys. A lot of pound for pound greatness talk, but as we sign off here, I do want to look ahead to maybe the hottest division in all of MMA rankings wise. I want to give people sort of a look ahead to. Of course, that's what I mean. I'm sorry. Men's divisions. Fair. This will probably. I'm trying to think when we'll do our next ranking show. Probably will be at the end of August or early September. I'm not sure, but by then, we're gonna have a lot of middleweight talk, guys. It is officially hot. Middleweight summer, almost every guy in our rankings. Wet t-shirt contest, let's go. Almost every middleweight in our rankings is competing, with the exception of Sean Strickland and Izzy Adesanya. I'll read it off real quick. We got number 1 DDP and number 2 Khamzat Chimaev, number 3 Nasruddin Imavov, and number 6 Caio Borralho, that just got announced for UFC Paris. Coming up soon, number 7, Robert Whitaker. Number 10, Reiner de Ritter. Number 8, Anthony Hernandez. Number 13, Roma Delitze. Johnny Eblin's back. Number 9, Johnny Eblin fighting Costello Vancinas at PFL Africa. Jared Cannonier just got a fight. Number 11, he's fighting Michael Page, who's ranked at welterweight. Number 12, Brendan Allen versus Marvin Vettori. Number 14, Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov. Fingers crossed. And number 15, Fabian Edwards, continuing in the PFL tournament versus Dalton Rasta. Do you like 185ers, guys? Do you like middleweights? Do you like middleweights? This is all we're going to be talking about next month. This is all the kids are talking about the UFC middleweight division. And PFL. I mentioned fighters in other organizations as well. So exciting stuff. But I can't wait to talk about it. It was a pleasure as always, guys. I think we answered a lot of questions about pound for pound. Jed's waving. Oh, I thought Jed wanted to make a final point. So thank you, Jed Meshew. Thank you, Dave Martin. Thank you, of course, EKC Leiden, the greatest producer. How could I forget? How could anyone forget EKC Leiden? This is Alexander K. Lee signing off. And remember, everyone, no matter where you rank your favorite fighters, just remember, you always rank number 1 in our hearts. Bye.
Love y'all.
Fade out, Casey. Fade out, please. Fade out, Casey. Yep. No, you're too close. You're way too close.